Good day, everyone, and welcome again to another In the Legal Zone from Clips4Sale, of course. And we have today, as usual, Corey Silverstein, thank you, and the lovely Dr. Chantel is here with us too. And as usual, we are talking all things legal with Corey today, who's one of the most amazing attorneys that we have ever come across in the last 10 years. Also, just so everyone knows that we have Dr. Chantel, I already mentioned that, but we have a doctor in the house. The only site with a doctor in the house, just so everybody knows that, in case anyone has an issue, we have a doctor in the house. Actually, two doctors, because Corey's like a half doctor. We can't really say he's a doctor, so maybe we could just leave that.
You're referring to like if someone has a brain aneurysm listening to the sound of your voice, Neil?
You never know. So anyway, we'll get to Dr. Chantel, and she'll tell us what the topic is today. Of course, if you have questions or stuff you want to post in the chat, you can. And also, if anyone has any future ideas for these things, if anybody has like things that they really want to talk about, different topics, just let us know in the chat, or you can email Chantel or whatever you want to do. It'd be easier to post them in here. So we can do them for next time, because we are going to do these once a month, and it'll be useful to have things that you guys really want to discuss and get into legal-wise. Anyway, I will leave it to you now, Dr. Chantel.
Awesome. Okay. Well, this was actually a special request topic from Neil that we're going to start off with today, which is, Corey, can you update us with what's going on or not going on with the UK porn ban, as it is colloquially referred to?
I didn't know it was a porn ban. That's a new one.
Well, it's air quoting. That's how they're calling it. It's not. It's
so
age verification. But tell us what's happening.
The UK's age verification law was supposed to take effect earlier in the month of June. It did not. Evidently, it is now on hiatus for 6 months, while apparently some internal processes get worked out. Is it going to happen in 6 months? I don't know. I don't think anyone truly knows. I think that, as you've all seen, Britain and the United Kingdom has its share of political drama and such going on and unfolding at the moment. One day I think they're in the European Union still. I'm not quite sure what they are right now. It changes by the day. But regardless, there has been a 6 month, in essence, hold. Where they're going to try to get their acts together. So as of right now, the UK age verification law did not take effect as it was supposed to last month.
Do you think anybody should be doing anything to prepare for it? I mean, obviously, this has been delayed, since 2018? I mean, this is not the first delay that's happened. So there's a lot of, it keeps getting pushed. So what should people be doing right now, knowing that there's a lot of murkiness, but also knowing that when and if it does come into effect, it's going to have an impact? What are your suggestions?
The best thing that people can do right now is knowledge is power. You got to stay on top of it. You got to continue to follow the various different legal sites that are covering it. Some of the services that are scheduled to come out have been releasing their own internal updates if you sign up for it. I believe AV Secure is one of them. Ultimately, though, as much as it pains me to say this, everyone's got to keep a very close eye on this, and we have to continue to wait and see. But, can we absolutely count on it that in 6 months this thing's going to take effect? I don't think so. But at the same time, could it? It could. It's anybody's guess. I have my own various issues with this particular law in terms of whether it truly does actually do anything to assist with stopping minors from accessing adult content, but that's a whole other discussion for another day. But regardless, it is worthy of talking about for a minute, because again, it has been put on hold for 6 months, and we're going to have to wait and see where it goes.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's kind of like, I hate drawing this comparison, but it's like Sesta Fosta, where it's horrible law. It doesn't do what it says it's going to do. But the fact remains is that it comes to pass and we have to deal with it. And so to ignore it, to just be like, I don't care about age verification, is not an option either. So.
I agree. But remember, Sesta Fosta is, unlike age
Is,
verification,
yes.
Sesta Fosta is enforceable law.
Right. I just meant the parallel of being bad law that doesn't do what it says it's actually going to do. But yes, Sesta Fosta is the law, and age verification is still pending, to be clear. Sorry. Thank you. I need to clarify. Yeah, so a whole lot of nothing for 6 months. Great.
More nothingness.
More nothing.
See, that's why I'm not surprised Neil brought this up as a topic, because they're, it's like, let's bring up the one thing that there really isn't that much to talk about. But let's
but it's important because it was supposed to come to pass, and they really didn't even bother delaying it until right when it was supposed to be enforced. They didn't announce the delay. And so it's really like kind of a game of porno chicken in many ways, where it's like, you guys got to get ready, you guys get it ready, and then no, or like porno Boy Who Cried Wolf. Either way.
Right, because that's what we were actually doing, that getting everything ready. It's a good thing we didn't actually pay for any service at the moment, because there's so many out there. So we didn't sign any contracts or anything, and it's good that we didn't, because, like you said, who knows if it's even ever going to take effect in the next 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years from now. Who knows? But meantime, whatever happens will happen, and we'll always be on top of it if we have to. So
will the UK still be a country in 6 months? I don't know. No.
Well, it's also kind of, it has to be difficult for the people who are the service providers for age verification, because the stuff seems to keep changing. There was a BBC thing that was done where they were talking about, oh, age verification is this and that. And the people who they were interviewing, the people who were conducting it, the reporters, and then the available information, it was all conflicting about how people would even go about getting a card or age verifying. So, I mean, clearly it's like a mega clusterfuck going on over there with this whole idea. So it's got to be really difficult for everybody involved who's trying to comply, which that's annoying.
Yes. So on to another topic.
So we've talked about that. So let's talk about something very, very, very scintillating that Corey suggested, which is financial planning.
Oh, that was going to be the majority of today's. I wanted to run through the other two topics fast, but we can jump right into the meat. You kind of,
yeah.
Chantel,
let's talk about financial planning.
Chantel threw a curveball at me. All right, so this is actually a topic, something that I've had a lot of discussions with various different business owners, individual operators, content producers, various different people who are in both the adult entertainment industry and the IT world as a whole. And there seems to be a little bit of an issue where people seem to forget or neglect how important it is to be financial planning and actually dealing with your finances and thinking about a long-term game plan and not just living day to day. Now, when I say that, what I mean is that, a lot of you, actually most of you who are listening and watching today's show are entrepreneurs. You run your own businesses, you create your own content, you're artists, you do your own thing. But a lot of you forget that, while business might be booming right now, you don't know what's going to be in 6 months, 8 months, 3 years, 5 years from now. And so one of the things that we don't talk about enough, that we need to talk about in this industry, is that you guys need to be thinking about your long-term financial strategy. Now, I'm not, the point of this isn't for me to sit up here and tell you, what stocks I think you should be getting into and so forth. That's not what the point of all this today is at all. The point of the discussion today is that there's not enough information out there, and people are, especially performers, are not doing enough to prepare for what might happen. Again, the 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. Perfect example I can give you is the unexpected medical emergency. A lot of people, just presume that, they're healthy now, things are great. Everyone can't be, bodybuilders like Neil, but someone might run into some sort of health problem where they can't be, lifting those 3-pound dumbbells like Neil does every day. Yes, I said 3 pounds.
Okay.
So, but you never know what's going to happen to you. You might get sick. You might, there might be an unfortunate accident, what have you. And now what are you doing? How are you paying your bills? And Chantel, one of the things again, this is one of these areas that has just been completely neglected for especially studio owners, content producers,
models in general. also.
In general, they a lot of time people get intimidated, or they think that, it's, I don't know what to do. I don't know who to talk to. But it's actually with the way the internet works now and so many different online banking tools and financial tools out there, it's actually a lot easier. And one of the first things that I always tell performers out there is to go ahead and make sure that you put yourself into a situation where you save up enough cash to cover 6 months worth of living expenses. When I say living expenses, I mean your mortgage, your car payment, your food, your shelter, your clothing, the essential things that you need to survive. The first thing before you start thinking of anything, as hard as it is, open up a savings account somewhere on your own. Don't put your partner on it or your significant other or anything like that, because that goes into a whole other issue of problems. Namely, that when you have someone else's name on an account, they can go in and take everything in it because their name's on the account. But you should have a special account just for you set up that you're always ready to cover a minimum of 6 months of your living expenses. Bare minimum. Now, once you get past the point where you have enough that you can cover your 6 months living expenses, is Platinum laughing at that? She's laughing? She's laughing.
She always thinks.
I think that she's got two screens.
She's got her own conversation going on. She's doing live cams while she's on here.
Fantastic. You know what? That's an entrepreneur right there. She's saving money, watching education, and working at the same time. That's a lesson, right? Neil, you should write that down. Neil, take a note.
And editing. She's also editing.
If she's editing right now.
And she's
She's hydrating, and she's drinking water. Oh my God.
That was like the biggest cup of water I've ever seen in my life. Did you see that thing? Like bigger. Look at that. It's bigger than her head.
So also, just to brief you in on this too, Corey, I was talking to Chantel about doing a webinar separate altogether, which would be about, the things that you're not taught anymore in school or sometimes even in college, about like how to manage your life, basically, like how to write a check, how to pay a bill, how to save, like all these things that a lot of people don't really even understand because they come right out of school and they're just thrown into this. And a lot of people who get into porn right away, they just assume money's going to keep flowing in, like you said, and it doesn't always. And they don't think about what's going to happen next. And it's just like, just give me the money now, here and now. And that's all I'm worried about. And I'll tell you one thing, that's one reason why when Clips4Sale started such a long time ago, that was the mindset was, instead of just shooting your content for, going and being a model for somebody and getting your money right away, the whole goal was, have residual income coming in. Yep. So that you control it yourself, instead of you get your $1,000 and now you might not book another shoot for a month or two and you're living off that money. So the goal was, control your content, do that if you want to, but also control your own thing where you're shooting your content, you have your own store. Now you actually have your own, your own business going on along with that. So you have two things going on. So that was one thing. We are going to do a webinar in the future, about.
And I think that would be an amazing, a great tool, Neil, because there's a lot of people that really don't know. They don't know, how to go in. They don't know how to choose a bank account. They don't know how to choose a credit card. By the way, avoid credit card debt. That's a totally other issue, but avoid it. But, one of the things that goes along with that, Neil, is that, so right now we live in this world where you get just compounded with offers and advertising everywhere. I mean, you go on Google, whatever, Amazon is popping up, whatever you were looking for. You're driving down the street, everything is ads and everything is this sell mentality. And it takes self-discipline, because what a lot of people do, and as everyone listening today and people listening later on to this webinar know, that it can be very, very fiscally beneficial to be in this particular business. There is a lot of money to be made. Now, just because you're making a lot of money, though, doesn't mean that you should be spending all that money. And this is something, Neil, that I think would be a really great opportunity for you to talk about when you do that webinar, because a lot of people just think, hey, you know what? I've got $5,000 in the bank. I want to go out and get myself a Louis Vuitton purse or a no, Chantel said no.
Not with $5,000. That's not enough money.
Yeah, there's your money right there. One shot.
Apparently I'm not in touch with reality. So apparently 5,000 is not enough. Oh, you can't resell it for $5,000. All right, whatever. You all got to destroy them at the point I'm trying to make. Okay, I get it. Louis Vuitton was a bad example.
Right.
We'll pick some other example. So you're sitting on.
You have to think about it this way, and again, we can get into this more, but you want to do things that are going to be beneficial for yourself.
A new car.
In the future, that's, not going to lose value. And gold is always a good thing to deal with if you have to invest in something, but that's always a thing. Gold is always.
What did Neil say? Did he say gold? Is that what he said?
Yeah. Isn't gold always that stable thing that's like,
Well,
I don't know.
Neil, I love that you think an 18-year-old is going to go out and buy some bars of gold.
Well, not right away, but when you save some money.
So,
and not bars of gold, but maybe like gold coins.
That's not what Neil means.
A big brick of gold.
No, that's not what Neil means. What Neil means is you got to go out like Neil does, and you got to buy gold chains, and you got to wear
chains where it's at,
and you got to look like a pimp from 1976. That's how you got to buy gold.
Yeah.
But anyway, so rule number 1 is you got to have 6 months worth of savings. Rule number 2 is you got to buy a gold chain like Neil. After that, we can talk about the serious stuff.
Yeah.
But in perfect honesty, the point that Neil was making is right. You're looking for something that's going to make you what's called derivative income. So when I say that, is what people should be thinking about is they should be opening up accounts. Just to put it out there, Fidelity, for example. I don't work for Fidelity. I don't even have an account with Fidelity, but I can tell you that based on their advertising, I know they offer free brokerage accounts where you can put money away into mutual funds and different things that'll allow your money to grow, potentially compound. And these are things that you guys should be thinking about. Again, it's very easy to have $5,000 sitting there doing nothing and say, hey, I'm going to go out. Apparently, it's not going to be a Louis Vuitton purse because, Chantel's the expert of that.
I'm not.
Or a bar of gold, as Neil is suggesting.
Yeah, that's going to cost you more than that, too, I think.
But $5,000 is more than enough to go and open yourself up a nice mutual fund and get yourself some sort of fund that, where you can start getting some derivative income.
So just, sorry, here's a question, though, because somebody actually brought it up, and I think it was Platinum, about making sure that your bank is business friendly, adult business friendly. What happens if you're a new person and you're trying to be financially savvy, you're trying to think long term, you're trying to do this, that, and the other? What sort of issues is there if you have a personal account with a bank and it is your personal, you've paid yourself, whatever, and is not connected to your business? What kind of issues are there? Is there going to be a situation where a performer comes in one day and finds that her professional work has then caused her personal banking to be impacted?
Yeah, so one thing that I always tell all of my clients to do anyway is don't have your personal accounts in the same place where you have your business accounts. So let's just hypothetically say you're using, ABC Credit Union as your business account. That's where you're getting your checks from Clips4Sale. That's where your money's linked to your PayPal account, or your customers are sending you tips, what have you. Don't go and open up your personal account at the same bank. Go to a different account, a different credit union, and get yourself an account that is completely unrelated to your business account. So if God forbid something happens to the business account, you're not going to be in a situation where all your accounts across the board are going to get shut down. So,
okay.
So this is like something that you should definitely be. And candidly, it's smarter to do that anyway, because nowadays what you want to look at is different banks are going to offer you different interest rates on your savings, some better than others. So you're going to want to take a look around and make sure that you're taking advantage of better interest rates, which are all crap right now because interest rates in the U.S. are crap. But
also, I have a question too. What percentage of your monthly income should you, after you have your 6 months, of course, but what percentage should you say, okay, I made $5,000 this month. What percentage of that should you pull out and say, this is going to be going for my future?
As much as humanly possible. I mean, when people, ask me, they say, well, what's the rule of thumb? Well, people generally say that you should be saving 15%. Every time you get a paycheck, you should take 15% and put that towards retirement. When I say retirement, I mean a 401k, some sort of retirement savings, et cetera. After that, you put aside whatever you can. But generally speaking, what I always tell people and what I've read is that really you should at a minimum be putting away 10 to 15% of every single check that comes in the door.
And also the sooner you start, the better. Obviously, that's one thing. Because I know, I waited myself personally. I waited a long time because I wasn't in this boat where everyone was like explaining these things to me also. So I kind of came into it late, and it was a little harder because I was already in my 30s and I'm already like 10 years, behind. So if you start in your 20s to start saving money, with a 401k, you could do besides the 401k, I think they also have like retirement, they have the IRAs. You could do something for yourself, and that's the problem too. A lot of people don't think about when they get older, and what am I going to need? Like they have the thing called it's not a perpetual care, but I'm sure most people in their early 20s aren't even thinking about this. But there is some things that cost a little bit per month that will make sure when you do get older, if you do have issues or whatever, you have like money coming in to take care of you if you're at home, if you have a hospice coming in, something to that effect, where it's paid for already for you with a nice lump sum of money every month. And, again, maybe because I'm in my 50s, I'm thinking about this more, but you should be thinking about it. And you're probably, I think the rule of thumb is in your late 30s, you could start doing these things with that particular thing where you're retired, and that's another thing too. When are you going to retire and all this stuff?
A guy like you, Neil, you should be thinking about Social Security. I mean, at this point,
yeah.
Your age, man, how quickly can you qualify?
Listen, Corey.
I don't even think I'll have Social Security. Who knows?
I'm just no. I mean, Neil, by the way, did you drink your prune juice this morning? Very important. I didn't hear from your wife this morning, so I just got to make sure that you drank.
Yep. I was in the, yep.
Listen, you two, go back to the relevant topic. Here's another question for you, Corey. A lot of people in the business are independent contractors, meaning the idea of retirement and all of that stuff, that's real murky anyway, because people aren't getting paid in the employee type of way. So thinking about it like that, the most obvious question for financial planning is taxes. So in addition to this 15% that you're saying people should be saving, how much should people be setting aside? Because you have to pay your taxes, else you're going to jail. FYI, I've known several people who've gone to jail for not paying their taxes. Yep. It's real.
Also, before you say anything, Corey, just that could be a little preamble kind of thing for the up and coming webinar that we have with an actual CPA, which is So I did get a hold of a really good CPA that I think everyone should jump on this. If anyone's watching this, it'll be posted in the admin. Everyone should get on, ask questions. Everyone needs to discuss things, like that with a CPA to figure out. But Corey can answer that question.
No, actually, Neil, you kind of stole the wind out of my sail there. I mean, ultimately, when it comes to taxation, this is one of the things that comes into play here in terms of planning. All of you guys need to get a CPA on board, every single one of you, because ultimately every person's financial situation is different, and being able to plan finances and plan for taxation is going to require you to actually get a CPA who's going to be able to look at what are you doing, how are you doing it, etc. So here's the issue. We talked about, Chantel said a second ago that, well, a lot of people aren't employees, they're independent contractors, or they're self-employed. That's all fine. That's great. And there are a lot of tools out there that you can utilize to save money in terms of paying taxes that you need to be taken advantage of. Again, some of them are, for example, by taking individual deductions. A lot of you work from home. There's a consideration that you might want to take a portion of your home, of your mortgage payment or rent, and dedicate that portion as a home office and deduct that. There's a lot of different things that you can do in this particular business. And so it's very important that when you're looking at your overall picture, and first of all, Chantel, the point you made about paying taxes is spot on. This is not an industry where you can just not pay your taxes. It doesn't work that way. And any of you who are not doing so, it's quite frankly, it's foolish, and it's going to catch up to you. Like Chantel said, we both know individuals who have gotten themselves in a lot of trouble over that. So don't be doing that. But ultimately, you have to be considering, if you're your own business, you need to be taking into consideration for every dollar you make, how much should you be setting aside of that dollar for taxes? Well, it depends on what tax bracket you're going to be in. Should you be setting aside 20%? Should you be 25%? Should you be paying yourself a salary maybe and just automatically paying taxes in? There's a lot of questions there that need to be answered. And ultimately, having a accountant, a CPA, not when I say accountant, I don't mean your Uncle Bob who read Taxation for Dummies one point. That's not going to fly. I'm talking about going out and getting yourself a licensed CPA, someone who knows what they're talking about, and someone that can tell you what you should be preparing for. Because again, this is another one of those areas where we've seen this before, Neil, where we've seen performers who, they work for a number of years and they make a lot of money, sometimes into the 6-7 figures, and they don't pay their tax. They don't even file tax returns for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. And then all of a sudden they get a letter and Uncle Sam says, hey, very nice to see what a successful career you've had, but where's my cut? And we see this all the time. And then guess what? If you can't pay it, well, there's a place that a special place with bars and horrible concrete walls that they put people who purposely avoid paying taxes. So,
I mean, they're always going to catch up to you. So you always have to think about it that way, that you're not going to get away with it. You might, think you can for a couple of years here and there, but it's all going to catch up to you. And you're always better off just to say, and listen, even in the beginning when Clips4Sale first started, I wasn't too, keen on like, what am I going to have to pay in taxes because I'm paying people? And I was like, thank God I didn't really just go out and buy a bunch of Louis Vuitton or gold and have all that money somewhere else. So I kind of just sat it there and said, let me see what's going on here. And thank God I did, because they do come at you with a nice percentage to be like, well, now you owe us this. And I'm like, whoa. So it's good. And I've seen other companies, not just individuals, but companies who see all this money coming in, they just start spending it thinking that, oh, this is all my money, but it's not. So even as a company, you got to look at, I got to put money aside to make sure I don't go under as a business. So that's one reason why we've been around for so long, is because we have been above board on all these things and do them, quarterly.
Another thing to think about too is, and I know we've touched on this before, but it just bears repeating, is depending on where you're at is which state you register, because obviously we all need to be companies and we're running as businesses, not as DBAs and all of that. We talked about that last time, but just the difference between, say, California and Nevada, the tax laws are so significantly different, and one state is much more advantageous than another, but you need to be familiar with that. So that's another reason why you'd want an accountant or somebody who is a total professional and knows this stuff, because you can get yourself into some long trouble just in terms of penalties and things if you have like the wrong type of stuff, or you're paying the wrong percentage and this, that, and the other.
Right. And it doesn't even matter where the accountant is located, though, because the one we're going to talk to is in Pennsylvania. Right. Which I also use him as well, and I'm in Florida. So as long as he knows the laws as far as where you are, which a good one should know, you can use any CPA as long as you're happy with them. They're adult friendly. They understand what you do as a business. These guys understand you want to save money, and you need to, if you have legit expenses, they're going to tell you these are all legit things you can do. So.
Neil and Corey, actually too, Lulu is asking, since you said adult-friendly accountant, financial advisor, Lulu's asking, can we talk a little bit about adult-friendly accountants and financial advisors? How does somebody find one? How does somebody say, hey, Mr. CPA, this is my job? I mean, what happens with all of that?
This is where you have to ask, and you can't be afraid to ask other people that are in the adult industry for people that they've used. For example, I have a CPA who's in my office. He shares space with us. He's actually, all I got to do is open that door, go down the hall, and walk for a little bit. But I can grab him, and ultimately he represents adult entertainment companies at the large scale, at the small scale. He actually represents a very successful group of Clips4Sale models that needed representation probably about 4 or 5 years ago now, but that's something I would do. If you reached out to Chantel, I'm sure she would know different CPAs that are adult friendly. If you talk to Neil, I'm sure there are adult friendly CPAs. It's a conversation though you need to have with your CPA right away, because any professional that you're going to work with, whether it be a CPA, a lawyer, whatever, they need to be comfortable with this particular business, and you need to be completely honest with them. And if you're afraid to be honest with your own CPA, lawyer, or what have you because of the business that you're in, he's the wrong guy or girl. So ultimately, that's not what you need. What you need is you need someone who's comfortable in this particular space, has experience in this particular space, and knows what to do with it. And so, what I always say to people is ask around a little bit, but if there is someone that you know locally, be honest with them. Say, hey, listen, some of my income comes from adult entertainment, and ask them truthfully, what do you think of that? What do you think about that? Are you comfortable with that? And if they say, if you even detect the slightest hinge, even if you get the slightest notion that they're not comfortable with it, or even a little comfortable with it, then at that point, what you have to do is find someone else. Because I tell you right now, they're the wrong person. You don't need anyone who's even going to double think themselves even for a half a second because of the specific business that you're in.
Right.
Right. Or somebody who's going to take you on as a client and then find out later on that their partners don't want you as a client or something like that. Or there's a litany of issues and it's all terrible, but you have to ask up front. And I mean, it will really save a lot of time, money, trouble, and like fury probably too.
Well, and that's, you know what, Chantel, that's actually a really good point, because, you have to think about how much time you spend in financial planning, tax planning, and think about if you go through that whole process and then you find out your guy you've been using, you can't work with him anymore. You got to start all over with somebody fresh after the person said they would get the job. And that happens all the time. Listen, there's a lot of bad professionals out there. There are people out there that are in the financial planning advice, that are even in the legal profession, that, can then ultimately give you bad advice or ultimately
take advantage of you in the first place. They might take advantage knowing you're making money and you could, especially an investment place that might be like, well, they don't even know what they're doing. So you give them fees that you don't even know. But yeah,
and going back, by the way, just to that, because you brought that up again, Neil, again, for people who are self-employed, I meant to say it earlier and I didn't, for long-term planning, you guys should all be looking into setting up IRAs. IRAs are it's an individual retirement plan. It's for someone who basically works for themselves. So this way, if you don't have a 401k, you can always go off, try to set up an IRA through your entity or I'm sure, Chantel, you're self-employed. I'm sure you're smart enough by now. You've set up an IRA, right, Chantel?
I did when I was an undergrad.
So again, there are a lot of financial, and one of the benefits of an IRA is you don't pay taxes on any of your gains right now. You pay your taxes when you take your money out later on in life, which hopefully will be 30, 40, 50 years from now, at which point you won't pay as much taxes as you would have had to pay now on the money. So a lot of good benefits. Something else that we don't talk enough about, a lot of you have children. Part of financial planning, you have to consider your children. So a lot of performers out there, they have kids. Don't forget, college is expensive. Don't forget that your kids are going to have emergency situations just like you might. So make sure that you have that other bucket that you're planning for the unexpected child need, which you never know when it comes up. I myself am a parent, and I can tell you that every day, for some reason, I seem to be spending money on something. It never really ends. Neil's a parent. He used to have a full set of hair, and you see what happens. You see what happens. This is what happens, because they just keep on coming back to that.
Yeah. But it's true. I mean, when it comes to kids, there's always, besides college, I mean, you have school, you have, you never know what's going to happen with kids. And I have 3, so all girls. So they, it's, oof. I don't even want to talk about it. But yeah, I think it's real important to make sure that you think about yourself and your family. Number one, you really have to think about that. And some people are like, well, I have my own business. This is number one for me. But think about it. If that business is not there, you're back to your family and this is your core. So you have to make sure that that's taken care of before anything else. It's kind of like the mask that comes down the airplane. You put it on first and then you deal with everybody else. So that's really the same sort of thing.
And that's like spot on. And so while you were talking, Neil, actually our good friend Platinum, she jumped in and she actually mentioned having life insurance and getting a will and an estate plan. Life insurance is huge, especially if you're in a position where you have children or dependents.
Right.
Dependents could potentially be a husband or a wife, or a spouse or whoever, or even a parent or someone that you financially support, that you want to make sure you continue to financially support. Life insurance policies, when you get them at a younger age, are actually a lot cheaper than when you get them older.
Right.
So if you're in reasonably good health and you try to get a life insurance plan in your 20s or early 30s, it's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper than trying to get it in your 40s, 50s, 60s, or whatever hell Neil age is. That's a whole other special.
I remember I had a lady come to my house, like a nurse, and she did tests on me and all kinds of crap. And they're like, well, we have to make sure you're approved.
That wasn't for the life insurance, Neil. That
that was not the drug test. That was something else.
That was something else.
Swear. But you know what? That also brings up a point for not just life insurance, but you have
estate planning, wills.
Like a trust, to set up a trust, which is another thing you could do that actually protects you. And I didn't learn about this till about maybe 5-6 years ago. But if you have trust set up in different names, that'll protect you also, because then the trust owns things like your business, or it could be anything. That's something you'd have to get into with the trust. What do they call them? I don't even know.
Well, so it's basically, it's estate planning. And so here's the reason why you want, a lot of people think, now here's what you guys want. A will is a document that in essence tells the world what you want to happen to your property when you die. Now, is a will better than nothing? Yes, but wills still have to go through what's called the probate process and the probate courts, which means that whatever your estate is will get drained by legal expenses, court fees, the appointment of potentially a public administrator, who knows. So putting that aside, what you want to look at is setting up a trust. The reason why you want to set up a trust is because trusts don't have to go through the probate courts. Trusts, if you have it set up correctly and you set everything up in a way, and a lot of people, you say trust and you think, oh my God, I got to have, gajillions of dollars to set up a trust. That's not true. You can set up a trust and have absolutely nothing in it.
Right.
But, a good estate plan, which is going to go state to state. Probate laws, estate planning laws vary dramatically from state to state. And what you're going to want to do is make sure that you find someone in your own state. But a good estate plan, not the crap that you're going to buy at the bottom shelf at Office Depot that says do your own will. None of that nonsense. A good estate plan, it'll probably run you $2,500 or so. And it's worth every penny. If you have children, if you have loved ones, the last thing
if you have dogs. I have estate planning for my dogs in my will. If something happens to me, my dogs have a trust.
I guess I got pushed out of that. Jeez, I thought I was in that.
Way to suck the air right out of a conversation. Yeah, that's it.
I'm just letting everybody out there know that you don't have to have human kids. You can also have fur kids, and you got to take care of them too. Just saying.
Yes, for all of you listening today, please ignore everything I've told you today. The primary concern in your life should be taking care of your dog after you're dead. Yeah. Forget about everything else. So. Now,
Boston's right though. Some people, that is their life, that animal. So
no, that's true. That's true.
I understand that. And some billionaires leave all their money to their pets.
Well, as I recall, Neil, your prized gerbil collection is the most important thing to you in the world, isn't it?
I don't have gerbils. I have dwarf hamsters.
Okay, excuse me. So, but the point that both Neil and Chantal are making is spot on. And having a trust, again, is an essential part. Sarah, a minute ago, my favorite person in the entire universe, who never turns her camera on for these webinars for some reason, mentioned that what about powers of attorney? So something you guys should be thinking about is medical powers of attorney. This is very important. These are the sorts of documents that talk about, okay, if you get sick, God forbid one of you get into a really bad car accident and someone has to make decisions. Who is it that gets to make those decisions? So a medical power of attorney will be the document that you would have that would indicate that in the case of your incapacity, here's the person that I give authority to make decisions on my behalf. You could also have an advanced life directive. This is a document that you actually tell a hospital, for example, you're in some sort of car accident and you don't want any sort of, you don't want to live on tubes and machines and so forth. Having a directive would deal with that also. It's a great point, Sarah. It's a very important thing to have. But generally speaking, your powers of attorney, medical power of attorney, medical directives, and then your trust wills, all that goes into one pocket. And whoever you hire as your probate specialist, or excuse me, your estate planning, probate's after you're dead, estate planning specialist would be the person who will get all of those documents ready. And they differ from state to state. Different states have different laws in terms of how many people have to witnesses, what sort of signature you need. Does it have to be notarized? Where does it have to be notarized? Is an original sufficient? Each state goes, is all over the board. So you're going to want to pay close attention to that. But Sarah,
maybe I can get the people who do trust that I know. Maybe they could even come on one for the webinar. I don't think they would have a problem with it, because they're really good at these things and they can explain exactly how they work. And of course, you want to make sure that you trust the person that is kind of dealing with your trust, because you got the wrong person in there, you might lose everything, because they decide what happens to your family. They decide if money's, delved out to people, how much. There could be, like, I have some certain things in there, like, well, if you're on drugs, if your kids wind up being, really bad alcoholics and this and that, then guess what? They're not going to get anything from your trust. So you could put all kinds of limitations on things to make sure that your money's secure and it just doesn't get blown by this one's boyfriend just came in the picture. Hey, let's take money out of the trust. You can't just do those things.
Well, I'm kind of an egomaniac, and so I actually have a very specific trust setup that says that anyone who's a beneficiary of my estate, if they don't come visit me at the grave 4 times a day, they get nothing. So, I mean, I know.
Let's go on to a serious question. Look what Platinum Pussy just wrote.
Platinum's writing everything.
Content ownership after death. What happens with that ownership after death?
Amazing, amazing, amazing question. Content ownership after death. This is another reason why you need estate planning. So we're dancing a little bit into intellectual property. And it's funny that you would jump into that question the second that I noticed that Larry Walters just actually jumped online, who's our copyright trademark guru. So it's just your timing for the question couldn't be any more perfect. Now, one of the reasons why there are specific things you want to do when you're filing for copyrights and trademarks, other intellectual property, et cetera, is you want to think about potentially having an entity own that intellectual property for the purpose of estate planning, so that then your estate plan, your corporate documents can talk about, like, okay, well, if God forbid something happens to you, you'll know exactly who will become the owner of your intellectual property. So Platinum, your question is absolutely fantastic, and it's something that you absolutely have to consider. And it's another reason why this is actually kind of going in reverse to one of the earlier episodes. One of the reasons why you've got to pay so close attention to intellectual property. And frankly, Neil, what we really should do is we should do like down the road, intellectual property should be like one of the special webinars that we do, like maybe like more of a simpler to understand one. And I'm sure Larry would volunteer to do it if he's listening. He's probably listening.
He's probably listening. He's in there. He's in there for sure. But you know what? I can tell you just from things that have happened in Clips4Sale, if someone did pass away who was a studio owner, what would happen is they basically, if they didn't leave it to anybody, a lot of times I hear from their parents, their mother, their father, could be a sister who contacts us and says, hey, I noticed I'm getting these checks. My son, my brother, I get these checks. And basically you have to prove to us that you are the person that should be in charge of this. So you have to send us a death certificate. You have to send us some valid information so that we can change the information from paying the person who is deceased to your estate or to his estate or her estate. And this has happened countless times already in the last 16 years. So it is important that the store either just doesn't get closed down, because a lot of these families want that money coming in still, that's either to pay for a funeral, to pay for their children, like they could have children, so they could use that money. And if there's nothing set up and nothing's going anywhere, the money just it shuts off and there's nothing. So you do want to make sure there's something where you put someone in charge of it after the fact, just in case, because you never know.
No, it's a spot on point, Neil. And at Eve, who's, I know you're a newcomer to the series here, your question is a great question, and I'm sorry to hear about your friend that passed. We see this all the time. It's insane, but we actually see this all the time where, so this particular CAM model, for those of you who didn't see Eve's question, has now passed away, but her sites are still going and money is still going and nobody knows who the money's going to. No one even knows who's running the sites. That's this is another reason why it's extremely important that you actually have some long-term planning, that you have actually some mechanism. Another thing that comes up out of that, Eve, is so, and this is something, Neil, that you'll find interesting. Part of estate plans now for business owners like yourself and people who are in the IT world, you actually, as part of your estate plan, you actually can now attach a list of your usernames and passwords to all of your various online accounts. Because what ends up happening is, so for example, Neil, in the unfortunate circumstance that tomorrow, Neil, you went skydiving without a parachute, which is something, I could see Neil do.
Yeah. Why do you have to use me as an example?
It's the best example I can think of. So Neil goes skydiving without a parachute, but now no one can get access to anything. They can't even figure out who to contact. And so one thing that a lot of people do in an estate planning situation is you prepare basically an envelope, or as part of your estate plan, you have a list of your usernames and passwords and who is it that gets access to that upon Neil's jumping out of a plane without a parachute on, which, obviously wouldn't be that smart. I was thinking
updated list, because think about how often passwords must be changed nowadays too. So that's also.
I actually have I can't remember what it's called. Keep Pass, I think it's called, I think it's called Keep Pass, and I put all those into this one program, and then I gave that master password. Right now, it's written down somewhere. So, because my wife said the same thing, like, how do I even get in anything? And I said, well, I'll just give you access to the master, and you can find everything in there. I update it every day if I need to. So that could be put into my trust also, and say, so whoever needs to can have access to this, which is good to have.
Well, one thing that so I'm Megan Live just pointed out, which she suggested Lastpass, which is actually what my office is now. We're recommending to clients. With Lastpass, it's very similar to what Neil just described. It's one master password that gets access to everything else. The nice thing about Lastpass, though, is it actually saves into the cloud, so it's continuously updated. So if someone is changing their passwords, what have you, it's updating, so you have an up-to-date list. Now, along the same wavelength, Neil, during last week's seminar, we started talking about cryptocurrency. And in the terms of financial planning and long-term planning, you've got to consider who you're going to give your access to your cryptocurrency to. Because remember, cryptocurrency isn't like you can just put it in a normal trust. It doesn't work that way at all, because everything works in everything's via hash and encrypted. What you're really going to have to do is probably, again, have another envelope where you actually explain to whoever it is you're leaving it to, here's where my crypto is, and here's what I want you to do with it, et cetera. Because it's not like a standard bank account. In a bank account will follow either one, what's in a trust, or two, the orders of a probate judge. But with crypto, there is no judge. There is no probate court. There is no document that can, you can't go to a person who can say, okay, turn over all that person's, crypto assets to me. It just doesn't work that way. So having a succession plan for your crypto holdings is extremely important also. So.
All right, Chantel, on to another topic.
Great point, Neil. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Oh, okay. So y'all, if that didn't make your head hurt and have a small panic, I don't know what will, but there's a lot of notes and things and lots of tasks that you can attend to. Let's talk about another task that people might need to be attending to, which is 2257. It was in the news again, Corey. Why more 2257?
Well,
Why?
The good news is there's nothing new. There's really nothing new to talk about. There's nothing new and special that anyone needs to do. The only thing that has happened is that we have finally reached the conclusion in the, I believe it's the circuit court. The circuit court, all briefs have now been submitted for the latest appeal. So the next thing, now that all the paperwork is into the judge, the next thing that will happen is oral argument will take place. Oral argument is when it's not the oral you're thinking of, Neil. Oral argument is actually all of the lawyers getting up in front of the judge and arguing their various different positions. Obviously, the Free Speech Coalition on one side, the government on the other side. Right now, oral arguments are slated to happen on Tuesday, September 10th. But my understanding is that there is a good chance that that is going to be delayed, which is very common. It's not uncommon, to possibly later on, sometime between the September 9th and the 13th. Michael Murray did a absolutely fantastic job briefing it on behalf of the industry. He actually did a phenomenal job really destroying a lot of the arguments that the government was making. Both sides have ultimately said that they potentially seeing whatever the Court of Appeals decides, another appeal up to the next point would be the United States Supreme Court. So it's back in the news, Chantel.
What is the outcome that they're hoping for?
Well, ideally, the plaintiffs want 2257 tossed out in its entirety, which to a certain degree, the trial judge has already done that. Now, is that, really where things are going to stay? Who knows? But this is going to, my guess is we're going to have, let's see, we'll have oral argument, and then you're heading into September time. Then you have to wait for the Court of Appeals to issue a decision, which could be anytime 4 weeks later, 6 weeks later, 6 months later. As lawyers, you never know, and no one gets to dictate the schedule of the Court of Appeals. They basically will write their opinion whenever they very well want to. So who knows? But the bottom line is that we still have a lot more time to go. Nothing has changed. Everyone still needs to comply with 2257. Everyone still needs to be doing everything they're supposed to be doing. But we have had a little bit of progression in the actual case in terms of where the case stands in the appellate process.
So, thinking about rulings, something that did happen, there was a ruling that had to do with this brand called Fucked, not F-U-C-K-E-D, F-U-C-T. Why do we care about that, Corey? What's the issue with that?
I have warned you, Chantel, over and over again that when you are doing these webinars, you are not to use any sort of bad words.
I had to spell.
So ladies and gentlemen, on the next webinar, we're going to start it off by watching Chantel having to wash out her own mouth with soap.
No, that's not happening.
All right. So XBiz has done a very good job covering the story. My friend and colleague, Larry Walters, who is here today, not sure if he's actually listening because he hasn't typed anything, and I've mentioned him a couple times. He did a really excellent job commenting on this. Oh, he is here. See, he typed something. So Larry did an excellent job commenting on this particular case. This was a decision that First Amendment lawyers really across the world, everyone thought it was ridiculous. In essence, the Supreme Court now said that the federal law that prohibited registration of immoral or scandalous trademarks is now out the window. It's a violation of First Amendment rights. It's a big win for First Amendment. So
this is a good thing.
It's a huge win, very, very, very big win. It's been something that, again, if you go back through and watch some of the old seminars that Larry and I have been doing all over the place in person at all the different trade shows we've been talking about forever, that this was frankly, it was a ridiculous law. It was never complied with the First Amendment, and the Supreme Court made the right decision by striking it down. So those of you that may have filed for a trademark at some point historically and were denied because the U.S. Trademark Office said that your name was immoral or scandalous, maybe it had a curse word in it, or it had something that they deemed, again, immoral or scandalous, that is out the door. Now, there was, as part of this opinion, some chatter that said that, and this was by Justice Alito. Justice Alito suggested that Congress should potentially maybe create a new law that would potentially ban vulgar terms. Now, I'm not exactly sure. Judge Alito is a very smart man. I wouldn't dare to say something negative about a Supreme Court justice, but at the same time, I'm not precisely sure what the hell he's thinking.
What counts as vulgar?
Well, that's a very good question. And to be quite honest with you, I'm not sure where he's going with it, but It was one of his, notions that he had as a trade-off. So who knows? Will we see Congress potentially try to put something through? Sure, it's certainly a possibility. Will it happen? Who knows? But for those of you who have any sort of trademark that you've been thinking of, or that you already did file that got rejected, now's the time to revisit that with your intellectual property lawyer to see potentially whether you should refile it, potentially, and see where that's going to go. But it was actually a big win, and I'm very
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with it. I think it was silly. I thought it was a silly rule to begin with, but regardless, it was a nice win for free speech, a nice win for the adult industry, and quite candidly, the victory didn't get as much attention as it should have. That's why we're giving it the attention it deserves here today. But I did pop a link to the XBiz article in our little window here, so feel free to give it a read. Again, my colleague Larry Walters is my trademark guru, so always good to read what he has to say and get his way in. And he is paying attention because he put "I'm here," so now I know he's here.
I imagine that's going to be, that's got to be a really good thing for a lot of people within the community, small studios, big studios, independent producers who maybe were intimidated to register their brand or their mark or their name or whatever, thinking that maybe, oh, it's too edgy or something, and now they can, and that's great. And that's also a good move toward actualization. I know that sounds all, I don't know, bleeding heart sociologist, but if you can have your brand and your brand is then registered and it's authenticated and real and things like that, that adds another dimension of power and legitimacy to the business and to the work that everybody's doing and stuff like that. And, this work is so often dismissed, and this is great that people can now do this and be like, no, I'm real, I'm trademarked. So.
And Platinum actually just made a really, 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 Larry made a funny joke, get your immoral marks now. That's actually.
Didn't I hear somehow by Platinum that you couldn't use Gmail or something somehow?
No, she has her name alone. She was concerned about filing a trademark for her name,
right.
which is something that you, at this point, yes, Platinum, this is something that you should be looking at again, because hers is a little different. Like think about that. Her name is, I don't want to get into a full blown analysis on a recorded webinar just for what do they call it, liability reasons, and read the small print at the end of it. But ultimately, okay, so Platinum says she's been denied using her name on various sites because my name is considered offensive. Okay, so Platinum, this is actually something, you are exactly the sort of person that you should be looking at this again. And this is something that for trademarks, I send all of my trademark work to Larry because this is what he does on a regular basis. Larry, why don't you drop your email address into the chat here, so anybody who wants to reach out to you regarding their trademark questions can actually reach out to you if you're still listening.
But that still doesn't mean that you can, like Platinum, that doesn't mean you can go on a platform and use it. They still could deny you regardless if you have a trademark or not, just because that's their own rules, right? Corey, am I right?
Well, if I'm reading this correctly, Platinum, was your trademark denied by the U.S. Trademark Office, or are you saying, yeah, no, what she's saying, Neil, is that she actually applied with the United States Trademark Office and her trademark application was rejected because her name was deemed offensive. And so now we have this decision from the U.S. Supreme Court, and I would think actually, Platinum, that's a game changer. So I would actually tell you to shoot a quick email to Larry and see what he thinks of it, because my guess is that he'll be able to tell you pretty quick whether you should refile or not.
Okay.
So,
and even companies or platforms that have sort of an arbitrary no offensive names or something like that, if you can go to a place and be like, look, my name is in fact trademarked by the United States government, like, I don't know what you're saying, offensive, like, well, it's a powerful tool. It's not to say that it's going to get them to change their terms of service, but right. It is a powerful tool to have that piece of legitimacy. It's a very empowering thing, I would think.
It helps.
I don't know, it seems cool.
We've had this argument before, and we've had this discussion a lot of times. A private company can make their terms. This is not the government we're talking about.
Sure. Yeah.
If Facebook wants to ban your username because they don't like it, they can.
Right.
If Twitter wants to do it, they can. Frankly, if Clips4Sale finds that your name is no good, or if Sarah's just having a bad day and wants to ban your screen name, she might do it.
Sarah doesn't do that.
Doesn't happen.
Oh, you haven't seen
But again, the
Sarah
point
and-
is that it's a piece that's legitimizing the work within the community. And yes, independent sites and independent companies, obviously they can have their own rules. We know that. We know all of that. But if as a group, we have a bunch of people who have these totally legitimized trademark names, that might push a sea change, and we might see something really awesome coming out of this in terms of sex worker empowerment, community empowerment, stuff like that. So,
well, where it also comes in handy is if you do use that name on like Clips for Sale and someone else comes in and tries to use a similar name, you have that trademark. You could show us that and say, listen, I got this. That guy has to change his store name, which we've done many, many, many times. This happened. So it does pay to trademark it. And now, obviously, you could trademark it as fast as you can. Go in there and start doing that.
That was exactly like what happened with, I'm sure you guys all remember the store Neil's Grandpa Panties. That was a Clips for Sale store, very successful. Someone came.
Corey tried to use that, and he couldn't.
No. Corey didn't try. Corey
tried to use that one. I remember.
Neil, man, I didn't try to step in to be Neil.
All right, we're about out of time. We've covered all the topics.
Is there anything else that people wanted to know, Miss Chantel?
No, Platinum. I do not like grandma panties. Thank you for that. I greatly appreciate that question. But
oh, there's a button. There's a button there. Wait.
Well, tell me when we're getting to the final thought, because I got.
Okay. Oh, I forgot. We have Corey's final thought. Shit.
Well, you usually do yours first, but I.
Oh yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Chantel. Is there anything else you wanted to?
No, we covered all of our topics today. I just want to let everybody know that our next in the legal zone, in the Corey zone, is August 19th. So there'll be an announcement sent out about that. But we'll be back. If you guys have any specific questions or topics you'd like us to discuss, please send them to me, send them to Sarah, send them to Corey directly, and we will discuss them here. And yeah, that's the big announcement. Another one's coming.
Yes. Not only that, but we have other things like we discussed before about planning your life, educational things that you might not know about as far as opening bank accounts, writing checks, what to do, how to pay bills, how to budget, how to just things that you might not totally understand about, about life in general. Just basically, I just started doing this and I don't know what to do. So this is what we would like to try to help people who don't really have the tools that were given via in school or college or whatever, and maybe they just want to deal with the school of hard knocks and just get right into it and say, teach me Corey, teach me Dr. Chantel and Neil. I need to know.
Dr. Chantel, please teach me.
Yeah. Exactly.
We also have our, I'm just going to call it in the accountant zone.
Okay.
And that's coming up on July 29th, also at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
You can't use the name of this webinar and change it to in the accounting zone.
Okay, well, the first one was in the clip zone, and then we use that for in the Corey zone. So yes, we can.
So when we
gotta talk to Neil about our nomenclature.
No. When we do a special presentation with Larry for copyrights and trademarks, or what are we going to call it? In the Larry zone or trademark zone? Could we please be more generic and boring? Like possibly?
I don't know what the title is.
Okay, we'll just stick with in the CPA zone. How's that?
In the CPA zone. So, either way, whatever we call it, that's coming up in 2 weeks, and so we'll be having
down
that.
With the Larry zone. Okay,
yeah.
Eve like the Larry zone. Well, thanks, Eve. I thought you were a Corey fan, but I see you flip to Larry that quick.
Did you have a
seminar for 5 minutes? She's in love with him.
Did you have a final thought you wanted to get out, Corey?
I have numerous final thoughts, but I will tell you guys this. I want to thank Chantel and Neil because this, when we first started doing these webinars, it was really kind of an experiment. And each time we do them, it's incredible. We're getting a tremendous amount of feedback on Skype and Twitter and Facebook, and people are loving this. So I'm going to keep doing this as long as you guys want to keep asking the questions. But please ask whatever questions you want to ask. I think it's really, really important. Now, but to end this, for those of you who weren't on the webinar when we first started, now you've all seen how Neil dresses for all of these.
I'm wearing like Clips for Sale.
No. This is important. Neil, could you undo a button for me, please?
It's already unbuttoned.
All right. So as you guys have seen,
I have nothing to see.
No. Neil has made it a point that he wants to be the guy in the industry who wears the biggest medallion in the
I
biggest.
don't even have a medallion.
Neil's thing. Well, I decided that I was going to put a stop to this nonsense, and so what we have here, this is the real Neil chain here.
That is not even mine.
This is. I had Neil. I actually had his wife send me something right out of his closet, and she sent me this morning via overnight FedEx. Neil's wife, as now I'm wearing the largest obnoxious medallion in this business.
Listen, I have a good idea for the next webinar. It'll be in the Jewish zone, and we'll talk about how to make gefilte fish and matzo balls and all that good stuff.
No. We can't.
Just for you, Corey.
It's not for me. You're more Jewish than me. Who are you kidding?
Oh, now we're going to talk about.
Okay, I think that we're about out of
Chantel's
time.
the biggest one out of all of us, so let's just end it at that. Okay, so anyway, everybody, I want to say thank you to Dr. Corey and Dr. Chantel with another amazing in the legal zone, we'll call it that, and Clips for Sale Legal Zone, and we will see everyone again soon, I'm sure, and I just want to say thanks again for you guys for showing up, everyone who's here, all the questions. Don't forget to tune in to all the future webinars coming out. We have many, many ideas to do different things, and of course, anyone who wants to do one-on-one with me, which is in the clip zone. Sorry, Corey, I'm losing that one.
One-on-one with Neil.
One-on-one with Neil, you can just talk to me about anything you want to. Clips for sale or not, doesn't matter what it is, anything. And we can discuss all different kinds of topics. So thanks again, everybody, and take care, Corey, Dr. Chantel, everyone else who is tuning in, everyone who's watching this. Peace out.
Bye, Sarah.